Once an engine attached to a train was afraid of a few drops of rain. It went into a tunnel and squeaked through its funnel and wouldn't come out again. The engine's name was Henry. His driver and fireman argued with him, but he would not move. "The rain will spoil my lovely green paint and red stripes," he said. The guard blew his whistle till he had no more breath, and waved his flags till his arms ached. But Henry still stayed in the tunnel and blew steam at him. "I am not going to spoil my lovely green paint and red stripes for you," he said rudely. The passengers came and argued too, but Henry would not move. A fat director who was on the train told the guard here to get a rope. "We will pull you out," he said, but Henry only blew steam at him and made him wet. They hooked the rope on and all pulled, except the fat director. "My doctor has forbidden me to pull," he said. They pulled and pulled and pulled, but still Henry stayed in the tunnel. Then they tried pushing from the other end. The fat director said, 1, 2, 3, push, but did not help. "My doctor has forbidden me to push," he said. They pushed and pushed and pushed, but still Henry stayed in the tunnel. At last another train came. The guard waved his red flag and stopped it. The 2 engine drivers, the 2 firemen, and the 2 guards went and argued with Henry. "Look, it has stopped raining," they said. "Yes, but it will begin again soon," said Henry. "And what would become of my green paint and red stripes then?" So they brought the other engine up, and it pushed and puffed and pushed and puffed and pushed as hard as ever it could. But still Henry stayed in the tunnel, so they gave it up. They told Henry, "We shall leave you there for always and always and always." They took up the old rails, built a wall in front of him, and cut up a new tunnel. Well, now Henry can't get out, and he watches the trains rushing through the new tunnel. He is very sad because no one will ever see his lovely green paint and red stripes again. But I think he deserved it. Don't you? Thomas often grumbled because he was not allowed to pull passenger trains. The other engines laughed. "You're too impatient," they said. "You'd be sure to leave something behind." "Rubbish," said Thomas crossly. "Just you wait. I'll show you." One night, he and Henry were alone. Henry was ill. The men worked hard, but he didn't get better. Now Henry usually pulled the first train in the morning, and Thomas had to get the coaches ready. "If Henry is ill," he thought, "perhaps I shall pull his train." Thomas ran off to find the coaches. Come along," he fussed. There's plenty of time," grumbled the coaches. He took them to the platform and wanted to run round it in front at once, but the driver wouldn't let him. "Don't be impatient, Thomas," he said. Thomas waited and waited. People got in. The conductor and station master walked up and down. The porter banged the doors, and still Henry didn't come. Thomas got more and more excited. The fat director stepped out of his office to see what was the matter, and the driver and fireman told him about Henry. "Find another engine," he said. "There's only Thomas," they said. "You'll have to do it then, Thomas. Be quick now." So Thomas ran round in front and backed down on the coaches. "Don't be impatient," said his driver. "We'll wait till everything is ready." But Thomas was too excited to listen to a word he said. What happened then, no one knows. Perhaps they forgot to couple Thomas to the train. Perhaps Thomas was too impatient to wait till everything was ready. Or perhaps the driver pulled the lever by mistake. Anyhow, Thomas started. And people waved and shouted, but he didn't stop. They're waving because I'm such a splendid engine, he thought importantly. Henry says it's hard to pull trains, but I think it's easy. Hurry, 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 he puffed, pretending to be like Gordon. As he passed the first signal box, he saw the men leaning out and waving and shouting. They're pleased to see me, he thought. They never seen me pulling a train before. It's nice of them to wave. And he whistled, peep, peep, thank you, and hurried on. But he came to a signal at danger. Bother, he thought. I must stop, and I was going so nicely, too. What a nuisance signals are. And he blew an angry peep, peep on his whistle. One of the signalmen ran out. Hello, Thomas, he said. What are you doing here? I'm pulling a train, said Thomas proudly. Can't you see? Where are your coaches, then? Thomas looked back. Why, bless me, he said, if we haven't left them behind. Yes, said the signalman. You better go back quickly and fetch them. Poor Thomas was so sad he nearly cried. Cheer up, said his driver. Let's go back quickly and try again. At the big station, all the passengers were talking at once. They were telling the fat director, the station master, and the guard what a bad railway it was. But when Thomas came back, they saw how sad he was and couldn't be cross. He was coupled to the train, and this time he really pulled it. But for a long time afterwards, the other engines laughed at Thomas and said, Look, there's Thomas. He wanted to pull a train, but forgot about the coaches. Thomas used to grumble in the shed at night. I'm tired of pushing coaches, he said. I want to see the world. The others didn't take much notice, for Thomas was a little engine with a long tongue. But one night, Edward came to the shed. He was a kind little engine, and felt sorry for Thomas. I've got some trucks to take home tomorrow, he said. If you take them instead of me, I'll push coaches in the yard. Thank you, said Thomas. That will be nice. So they asked their drivers next morning, and when they said yes, Thomas ran off to find the trucks. Now, trucks are silly and noisy. They talk a lot and don't attend to what they are doing. They don't listen to their engine, and when he stops, they bump into each other screaming, Oh, 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 whatever is happening? And I'm sorry to say they play tricks to an engine that is not used to them. Edward knew all about the trucks. He warned Thomas to be careful, but Thomas was too excited to listen. The shunter fastened the coupling, and when the signal dropped, Thomas was ready. The guard blew his whistle. Peep, peep, answered Thomas, and started off. But the trucks weren't ready. Oh, 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 they screamed as their couplings tightened. Wait, Thomas, wait. But Thomas wouldn't wait. Come on, he puffed, and the trucks grumbled slowly out of the siding onto the main line. Thomas was happy. Come along, he puffed. All right, don't fuss, grumbled the trucks. They clattered through stations and rumbled over bridges. Thomas whistled peep, peep, and they rushed through Henry's tunnel. Then they came to the top of the hill where Gordon had stuck. Steady now, steady, warned his driver, and he shut off steam and began to put on the brakes. We're stopping, called Thomas. No, answered the trucks, and bumped into each other. Go on, and before his driver could stop them, they had pushed Thomas down the hill, and were rattling and laughing behind him. And poor Thomas tried to stop them from making them go too fast. Stop pushing, he hissed. But the trucks took no notice. Go on, they giggled in their silly ways. He was glad when they got to the bottom. Then he saw in front the place where they had to stop. Oh dear, what shall I do? They rattled through the station, and luckily the line was clear as they swerved into the goods yard. I must stop, and he shut his eyes tight. When he opened them, he saw he had stopped just in front of the buffers. And there, watching him, was the fat director. What are you doing here, Thomas? He asked sternly. I've brought Edward's trucks, Thomas answered. Why did you come so fast? I didn't mean to. I was pushed, said Thomas sadly. Haven't you pulled trucks before? No. Then you've a lot to learn about trucks, little Thomas. They are silly things and must be kept in their place. After pushing them about here for a few weeks, you'll know almost as much about them as Edward. Then you will be a really useful engine. Every day, the fat director came to the station to catch his train. Hello, he always said to Thomas. Remember, don't be impatient, Thomas. You'll never be as strong or fast as Gordon, but you can be a really useful engine. Don't let the silly trucks tease you. There were lots of trucks, and Thomas worked very hard, pushing and pulling them into place. There was also a small coach, and two strange things his driver called cranes. That's the breakdown train, he told Thomas. The cranes are for lifting heavy things like engines and coaches and trucks. One day, Thomas was in the yard. Suddenly, he heard an engine whistling. Help! Help! Oh, a goods train came rushing through much too fast. The engine was James, and he was frightened. His brake blocks were on fire. They're pushing me! They're pushing me! On! On! Said the trucks. Still whistling, help! Help! Poor James disappeared. Bother those trucks, said Thomas. Soon came the alarm. James is off the line! The breakdown train! Quickly! Thomas was coupled on, and off they went. Thomas worked his hardest. Hurry! 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 He puffed. He wasn't pretending to be like Gordon. He really meant it. Bother those trucks and their tricks. I hope poor James isn't hurt. James's driver and fireman were feeling him all over to see if he was hurt. Never mind, James, they said. It was those silly trucks and those old wooden brakes they gave you. We always said they were no good. Thomas pushed the breakdown train alongside. Then he pulled away the unhurt trucks. Oh dear, they groaned. Serves you right, puffed Thomas. He was hard at work, puffing backwards and forwards with them all day. This will teach you a lesson, this will teach you a lesson. They left the broken trucks, and with two cranes, they put James back on the rails. He tried to move, but he couldn't, so Thomas helped him back to the shed. The fat director was waiting anxiously for them. Well, Thomas, he said, I've heard all about it, and I'm very pleased with you. You're a really useful engine. James shall have a new coat of paint and some proper brakes, and you shall have a branch line all to yourself. Oh, thank you, sir, said Thomas. Now Thomas is as happy as he can be. He has a branch line and two coaches called Annie and Clarabelle. He puffs proudly backwards and forwards with them all day. He is never alone. Edward and Henry stop by quite often and tell him the news. Gordon was always in a hurry with the express, but never forgets to say poop poop, and Thomas always remembers to say peep peep in return.